which is huge. The first thing is fermentation. And man, this is my very, very favorite sclera sign. From iridology, you can tell yeast inside of the intestines if it's out of balance. Fermentation lines, you can tell where the yeast is. A fermentation line, you'll have a little line, and then you'll have either a purplish bluish dot at the end or a red dot. Both of these indicate fermentation.
What color did you say the other one was? Blue?
Bluish purple.
Bluish purple. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But it will be at the end of a line. As it starts getting better, it will spread out, so it will look like it's larger, but it will not be as dense. So think of it as a cloud. You can have a really dense cloud, and before it starts breaking up, you can kind of see through it, and it fluffs out, and then it disappears. That's what this looks like. It kind of bleeds out, and then it disappears. And fermentation, I always add a 0.5 because yeast can do havoc to the body. It really can. So here is a fermentation. Here is a fermentation. These ones, see how these are busting up? These are fermentations as well. These ones still you need to work on. These ones are starting to go away. So we know that the person has yeast affecting the brain, affecting the ear, because the ear would be over here. And that you'd have to look at your chart to see.
Do you give more prominence to the bluish purple than the red, or vice versa, or equally?
I do it equally. I haven't seen too much of a difference. A fermentation line indicates a fermentation line. Victoria, have you noticed the difference between the red and the purple?
No, I work with them both the same.
Yeah, I work with them both the same. I just get rid of the yeast. So it might, Dick, but if it does, I'm not privy to that information.
Thank you.
Okay, look at this purple right here.
What I would look at, though, if you wanted to even go further, see that line where that little fermentation is, how light it is. The prominence of that line leading up to that fermentation may make a difference.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
Look at these. So now, something that I know of no way of seeing yeast in the brain with iridology, you can now tell with sclerology. You can tell if it's in the brain, you can tell if it's in the thyroid, you can tell if it's in the kidney or wherever it may be. I find a lot of times it's in the brain area. Not always, but vast majority of the time you'll see it in the brain area. And this one lady came to me, I looked at her eye and I said, man, you got yeast everywhere. It's out of control in your intestines. I learned after the iridology, and it's in the brain area really bad. And she said, well, I can't smell anything. And I said, well, I think you have yeast in your sinuses and in your brain. She went to the doctor and they did an MRI and they said she had a tumor in the front part of her brain. When they went in there, they did brain surgery. They opened up. When they did it, it was just a pocket of yeast. Because when I looked at her eye, I said, I don't see any sign of a brain tumor, but man, I see a lot of yeast. Man, she was really impressed because the MRI showed it looking like a tumor when it was just a thick thing of yeast.
Mary?
Yeah?
Okay, just thinking about this, because someone's asking, oh, what was the difference in the red and the blue? But in thinking about this, you know, when we're learned about the different hues and stuff, even in the sclera lines, the bright red means it's active and acute, where the blue tells us to look in what the lymphatic area as well as the spleen involvement. So that could be a trigger.
Might be. I'm just not sure, Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
Here's some more. Look at this one. That one's really.
Would the red have any hematogenic, by that I mean blood indicators?
As far as I know, this does not indicate yeast in the blood, although if there's yeast throughout the body, it's usually in the blood as well. All I know is since this is going towards the brain, it indicates there's yeast in the brain.
Yeah, that's something iridology would never tell you.
No, no. And I really like that.
Yes.
Because if someone's autonomic nerve resistant, it's hard to tell if they have yeast out of control in the intestines. And if it's out of control in the intestines, it doesn't mean it's out of control it's deposited in the brain. So this is huge for me. This is, like I said, one of my favorite sclera signs.
Yeah.
I use this one a lot.
This is a breakthrough for me.
Okay, now here's one that's unusual. There's fermentation here. There's yeast. And this would be, let's see, maybe the bladder. Is that where the bladder is, Victoria? Let's see. This is a left eye. Yeah, that's the bladder. So this person has yeast in their bladder. But look at these. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That might be, expected. That primary place you might expect to find yeast, particularly in females.
Right. Yeah, that happens a lot. Look at these ones. Look how broken up they are. At one time, that was a dot. And as we worked with the yeast, it starts breaking up. These are all dots at one time. See how when I tell you it's like a cloud breaking apart before it fades away?
Yeah. What about down there at 9 o'clock? There's two.
Yeah, these are both fermentations too. And that would be maybe in the bronchus. Where else could it be? In the throat.
Could even be thyroid.
It could. You're right, it could. Because there's two of them. This one could be thyroid, and this could be more in the throat or the bronchus. Yep. So I just love this sign. And like I said, as you work with the yeast program, you can tell if it's a good program for that particular person because this starts breaking up very quickly. Now look how these ones haven't even started broken up yet. What I do for fermentation is I have people eat fermented foods. I have yeast fungal. But if you're going to work with yeast, make sure the bowel is moving very well. Because if not, you will auto-intoxicate from the die-off of the yeast. And people can get really quite sick. And you don't have to get sick. If your bowels are moving, you get rid of the die-off and you don't reabsorb it and you don't get sick. So I like acrylic acid. I like coconut oil.